to. And in my interview, the head of procurement asked me, why do you want to work for Coca-Cola? So the interview started as he asked me, how do you pronounce FrieslandCampina? What does FrieslandCampina do? Which is a Dutch-based dairy company. I told him, and Agro Foods acquired him. Then his last question was, why do you want to work for Coca-Cola? And my answer was, if you go back 45 minutes, you ask me a question, what does FrieslandCampina do? Now, I want to work for Coca-Cola because that is one brand that everybody in the world knows. My daughter turned 4 last year. Since 2, she's been drinking Coke. She's been ordering Coke. To my great grandfather, who passed away at the age of 80, knew what Coke was. So that is what my vision was, that I wanted to work for and be part of a global brand, and Coke helped me do that. There are things I learned in school, but I never thought I would apply them to the procurement landscape. For example, Porter's five forces. I think that was one thing, and your reaction was the same reaction that I had when he told me that. But let me explain to you. But what is Porter's five forces? Buyer power, supplier power, threat of new entrants, availability of substitutes, and there's one more. So when I'm negotiating with a supplier, I need to understand what the supplier power and what the buyer power has. If I'm
Hmm.
Coca-Cola and I'm buying negotiating with a company called Bic, which makes pencils, who has more power? Probably Coca-Cola has more power.
Yeah.
Then we also need to see what are we buying. My approach would change if I'm buying a pencil. Even if I don't get the deal, I'll probably walk out the door and I'll find 20 other suppliers that can give me a pencil. But if
Yes.
I'm negotiating with somebody who's giving me aluminum cans, and in Pakistan, there's only one company that provides local aluminum cans, which is PABC, Pakistan Aluminium Beverage Cans. My there the supplier has more power because of what they're constituting. So the approach is Porter's five forces. Then you see how important you are for the supplier. If I contribute to more than 25-30% of the supplier's revenue, he or she would treat me in a very different way. If I only contribute to 2% of the supplier's revenue, they would treat me very differently. So substitutes, how easy it is to substitute from one to another. So taking the example of this pencil,
Hmm.
if one doesn't work, the second will work, second doesn't work, third will work, third doesn't work, fourth will work. But substitutes, if I have only one aluminum can company and
Hmm.
they are the ones who are approved, I cannot easily switch to another company. So whatever I have to make a deal, I need to make sure that the deal happens there and then, and it is beneficial for the both of us. So you learn as you go along in your journey, and you do not get the same response every time. So, and then the other thing is the element of surprise also gets eliminated. So if you have a fear of meeting new people, by the time you're meeting your 15th or 20th new people, there's so much that you already know that you can make a conversation, you can create a conversation, you can lead the conversation. So that is how I tend to take out of my networking sessions.
Wow. Honestly, I didn't know about all of this, and this is educational for me. Thank you so much. And I'm sure people who are looking at this and who are maybe new to networking, or maybe they do network, but they're trying to improve the networking skills, I think they can really take notes from this. Uh, but there's one more thing that I want to talk about, which is about data analysis and supply chain, because now we are kind of looking into how, uh, I mean, I mean, I moved to England 3 years ago, so I'm still very new to the whole global market. I graduated in 2020. So for me, for Pakistan in general, the transition to data analysis was very new. Uh, I mean, globally, data analysis was implemented a long, long time ago, but in Pakistan, it was still a new concept. So I'm still very much new to the whole Python and SQL and everything. But I do see nowadays that many of the supply chain professionals are kind of combining their supply chain knowledge
Yeah.
with data analysis. And I do see that there are jobs as well who actually give you a lot more money and are more in requirement if you know supply chain and data analysis. So if we talk about data analysis, what kind of softwares do you recommend for someone if somebody wants to combine data with supply chain?
My only take here is this: don't follow anything blindly,
Hmm.
because everybody is doing it, you should do it as well. The first if you we're talking about data analysis, the first thing you need to analyze yourself. Where do you fit in the whole picture? What does your job actually need this? Or are you
Mm,
aiming for a job that is going to do this? A lot of the time I meet people, I come across people where they say that, we've done this way, but I don't use any of this in my job. So I'm like, why did you do it?
yeah,
Like I had
yeah,
four friends, they were doing it. I thought I also do it and I spend this much amount of money, but I don't use it. So put your knowledge, put your brain to better use for things you'd actually use rather than just doing something for the sake of doing it.
yeah.
And for that, it's important that you analyze what is required for you and
Uh,
how will you benefit out of it.
so when it comes to the numbers and everything, I can totally see that yes, purchasing and buying is an important part of an organization. But I really want to ask you because you are based in Canada and you're working for a multinational company. What career line does purchasing have?
Things. One, some people use these terms interchangeably, purchasing and procurement. I still feel purchasing is a part of procurement. And that is
Okay.
how I have been taught, and that is how I see. So, purchasing actually means buying of goods and services.
Yeah.
That is very essential for organizations. Generally, a good organization would have about 40 to 45% of its purchasing or its of its procurement budget would be a draft as a result of its sales. So about 40% of their annual revenue would be their procurement budget.
Um,
And those
I'm honestly I'm overwhelmed by this call because this is education for me, and I'm sure people who are going to watch this is going to be a huge beneficial for them as well. With this, I'm going to move on to the last part. It's not really a question, it's just a small answer that I would require from you. Arslan, would you be open to staying in touch for future mentorship, not just with me, but also for any other Pakistani or international student who reaches out to you on LinkedIn?
1 million, like my little one says, 1 million, 1,000 billion%. I am open to this because this is, like you said, this is a way for me to give back. I would love to share my experiences, and this can go, and the mentorship can. I'm definitely open to this to you, to everybody who would listen to this, who would watch it. I'm open to that mentorship. Please feel free to connect with me, and I'm happy to share whatever I've learned or whatever help you need. And this can be extended to anything you want to understand a certain thing. You want to just speak your heart out about something. You want to understand something or talk about something. Feel free to use this channel because I do understand that it definitely helps if you talk to somebody about a few things, and it definitely like I'm a firm believer of networking, and I believe and I say that I've reached here based on the networking that I've done. And if I then do
Mm.
not allow others to network with me, then I would not be preach what I believe in. So I'm a believer of preach what you believe in. So I have networked, and I will give this opportunity to others to network with me as much as possible as well.
Sir, that is so kind of you. With this, we are going to end our interview. Arslan, thank you so much for taking out the time for this. Uh, Recording in progress. Right. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Reconnecting Pakistan, an effort to bring you inspiring stories of Pakistanis who have moved abroad for education, career opportunities, and professional growth. In each episode, we try and explore the pathway these Pakistanis have chosen to move abroad, the challenges they face, and how they achieve success in their respective fields. If you are a Pakistani thinking of studying or working abroad, I personally believe this interview should be of great help to you. Today, I'm joined by Arslan Rawn. Arslan Rawn is the head of procurement operations delivery for commercial corporate services at Roche Pharmaceuticals. Arslan moved to Canada back in 2017 for his Master's of Science in Supply Chain Management and Logistics from the University of Windsor. Arslan has had a very illustrious career and has worked with companies like Guillemot Textile, Coca-Cola, Pizza Hut, PepsiCo, FrieslandCampina, and now for Roche. I think this call will have a different structure since this is a heavily focused call for mentorship for individuals, particularly in supply chain procurement field. With that, Arslan, Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Thank you so much
Right,
for joining.
Samad, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for this introduction that you gave.
I am so glad to have you on this call, and I personally think this call will be of great value to anybody who is either in the supply chain field or if any Pakistani who wants to move to the supply chain field. With this, I'm going to move on to the first part of the questionnaire, which is about your career journey and transition. So, Arsalan, question number one. Can you briefly share your journey from Pakistan to your current role at Roche?
I will, before I begin, I just want to thank you for bringing this forum together and for us, for Pakistanis to reconnect globally. I think it's a great job that you're doing, and I wish you all the best in continuing and list and looking forward to meeting new Pakistanis through your forum.
Inshallah, I really hope so. Thank you.
So, so before I begin, I just want to say one. So, my mantra in life has been the only change in your life, the only constant in your life is change. So everything is always going to change. And secondly, something that my father said to me that the moment you geographically bound yourself, you are slacking your opportunities by half. So building on to this, when I look at his career, and I think I inbuilt this from him, he's worked for in countries like Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Nepal, where Bangladesh, where people don't even think of working as being a Pakistani. He's
Mm,
devoted himself in working these countries outside Pakistan, and I've seen him how he actually benefited out of the geographical location strategy, and that is what I have had. What I wanted to do something similar. So I did my undergrad from Lahore School of Economics. I started my undergrad in 2010. In 2013, I was in my third year, almost completing fourth year, and I wanted to move out of the country. So I am a Canadian citizen. I was not born. I moved to Canada when I was in grade three, but I moved back to Pakistan in grade seven or grade eight. So I've spent my initial childhood in Canada, then I moved back to Pakistan. So when I was in undergrad, I wanted to finish my undergrad or do my undergrad from abroad, and that is where in 2013 I came to Canada on an exchange program, and I wanted to get that exposure and potentially wanted to finish my degree from Canada. Things were not again, like I said, this is the change part that happened when I initially moved to Canada. I went back to Pakistan, then came to Canada in 2013. I started my undergrad. I spent about a year, and I was facing a lot of struggles. A Pakistani moving by himself to Canada did not have a lot of friends, did not know how to make friends at that age. Came into third year into university, where in first year or second year, that's where you blend in and you meet friends. Third year was very difficult. That year was very struggling for me, and I could not settle down. But I took that as an opportunity. I in 2014, I decided that I'll probably move back and finish my degree from the Roche School of Economics, as I had only 1 year left. But during that time, rather than wasting time, I was hired. I started working at Pizza Hut as an assistant restaurant manager. So I was actually going into that is where my feeling for operations started to build out, where I was actually learning how to manage a restaurant while I had that year gap. So that is where my initial exposure uh, carried out. My first job, however, was in grade five when I was in Canada, and I took a summer job of distributing newspapers. So
okay.
every morning in the summer, 5 a.m., I would go down to my building. We would have a whole stack of newspapers and flyers. So from 5 to 7, I would put all the flyers into those newspapers, make those stack, make my route, load them on my bicycle, and then go out into the neighborhood delivering newspapers. So for me, always striving, going out of my comfort zone, exploring new things had been inbuilt with me, you can say, from grade five. So then I went back to Pakistan, completed my undergrad from Lahore School of Economics in marketing and finance, and that is where I started to explore in the industry what to do. At that time, marketing was the buzzword that I heard. Or growing doing my undergrad, marketing was that one thing that everybody was talking about. I People wanted to become brand managers, they wanted to become marketing directors, because that was the route to become a CEO. You always
Mm,
see people in marketing or sales going into the CEO route, so that was the buzzword.
mm,
I started realizing that's probably not something I want to do, but I want to do something that's more impactful. I started talking to people, and that is where the supply chain word came out in 2015. And somebody told me at that time that supply chain is still evolving in Pakistan, but it is going to be a game changer in the next decade. So, and fast forward 2020, during COVID, we realized how important supply chain became. And I called that person again, and I'm like, in 2015, you told me that within the next decade, supply chain is going to do wonders. Well, that
Yeah.
decade has been cut by half, but in 2020,
Yeah.
the greatness that supply chain is doing.
Yeah.
So leveraging that knowledge that I gained, that market research that I did, I chose a program specifically in Canada for supply chain. Based on my experience, it was a very difficult time for me to convince my parents to let me go back to the same country where I could not settle a few years back, but I was able to convince them, and I did my program in supply chain management and logistics from the University of Windsor. That
Mm.
program turned out to be amazing. I graduated with a Dean's List of Honor,
Oh,
and
wow.
I was working full time. The challenging part for me there was that you see the PepsiCo experience on my CV.
Yeah.
I was working full time and I was doing my master's full time because I wanted to gain the maximum amount of knowledge and experience I could in that time. So I was an account merchandiser. What the account merchandiser used to do was go into shops like Walmart, the Sobeys or Target, as you would say, and they would merchandise the product on the shelves. So I would start my day early, 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m., 5 a.m., work until 10, 11, or sometimes go late at night, service those shops, and then study during the day. That is how I spent about a year and 16 months of my life where I was waking up at 4 a.m. every morning and I was working as well. When I
Wow.
landed my first job, or people when they see me, they say, "You're so lucky you have this job." But I tell them, well, luck definitely had some part to play with it. But there were times when you were out, you were going back home in summer vacations, or you were going back home in winter vacations, or you were out watching a movie on a Friday night. But I was in bed at 9 p.m. because I had to wake up at 4 a.m. So I did my fair share of hard work to let
Mm.
me land to help me where I am today.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
so I graduated in 2018. I got married in 2018 as well, and that at that time I decided to move back to Pakistan and explore opportunities in procurement. I was a very firm believer of giving back to the society as well. For me, staying in Canada was not the major objective at that time because I already had my nationality. I
Mm.
wanted to go back and see how the supply chain environment has actually evolved and how I can contribute back to the country. So in end of 2018, I moved back, and 2019, I started my job at FrieslandCampina in procurement. I was lucky enough to, and this is where I would say luck came into play. I got a job. My first job at FrieslandCampina was in procurement. That is something what I wanted to do within the
Mm.
supply chain ambit, and it was focusing on marketing and sales procurement. Because I had a marketing and sales background, I did the PepsiCo job where I was merchandising. I was a merchandiser myself, so my role was marketing, advertising, communications, looking at point of sale material, looking at billboards, buying digital procurement services, buying your agencies. So I had somewhat of an marketing experience. So that is where I would say 100% luck helped me. I spent my time there. For me, even though I was in doing one small portion of my category, the learning exposure was always there for me. I wanted to learn more, and I what fast-paced my career growth there was that 2020 when COVID came, I was still part of one subgroup, but I did take initiative of doing a lot of other things. One of
Okay.
those things was I partnered up with the manager who was looking at direct materials and packaging materials, and I started understanding, okay, so what are we doing with Tetra Pak? What is our business continuity plan with Tetra Pak? How are we? And that's not part of my job. It's outside my job's ambit where I'm trying
Mm.
to learn all of that. I spent 2020 being his right hand, understanding, creating business continuity plans, and all of this. And due to which, when I was meeting with Tetra Pak, I was meeting with all of these big suppliers. Somebody at Coke shared my name that there's a guy named Arslan who has a decent knowledge in procurement and in packaging procurement, whereas I've never actually did packaging procurement. I just supported on a lot of initiatives in that time. I was contacted by Coke and they wanted to hire me as a procurement manager for their primary packaging.
Oh
So
wow.
I then chose that route. And the reason I did that was somebody told me for to grow within procurement you need the whole 360-degree experience, indirect procurement, direct procurement. And for me, working for Coca-Cola global brand was a dream come true. And in my interview, the head of procurement asked me, why do you want to work for Coca-Cola? So the interview started as he asked me, how do you pronounce FrieslandCampina? What does FrieslandCampina do? Which is a Dutch-based dairy company. I told him, and Agro Foods acquired him. Then his last question was, why do you want to work for Coca-Cola? And my answer was, if you go back 45 minutes, you ask me a question, what does FrieslandCampina do? Now, I want to work for Coca-Cola because that is one brand that everybody in the world knows. My daughter turned 4 last year. Since 2, she's been drinking Coke, she's been ordering Coke. To my great grandfather who passed away at the age of 80 knew what Coke was. So that is what my vision was, that I wanted to work for and be part of a global brand, and Coke helped me do that. Spent my time at Coke within the packaging category. This was the first time where I had logistics experience as well, and they mixed up a primary packaging category with a non direct category logistics, and they gave me the portfolio managing primary packaging and logistics. The experience it has Coke has been a very difficult time to work because it's very fast paced, but the experience I got in that year around is probably multiplied by 3 years if I had worked in any other company, because it's so fast paced. Moving after that, I worked at Coke, and then I moved back to Canada. Reason, my wife is a dentist. She wanted to explore opportunities outside the country as well. She wanted to go to the UK, but we thought let's go to Canada, where it's still a second home for us. I'm a national. My daughter's a national. My wife's on a PR. So we chose Canada to come back to Canada as a second home, and we again started from scratch. But
Okay.
starting from scratch, I got my opportunity at Roche, and part of it has to do with the experience I learned at Coke, the brand name I had with Coke. So I started off with at Roche within the procurement function of consulting or external workforce, whereas I was responsible for procuring consulting services. This is what enabled my or accelerated my growth path as well, where I was working with suppliers like the suppliers who we read in our management books: BCG, Boston Consulting Group, McKinsey, Deloitte, EY, PwC. So all of those big names that I've only heard about, I started working with them. And then the exposure that I had, because when you're talking to a consultant, they are bringing back experiences from 20 different industries. So I actually accelerated my learning based on my discussions with them. The
Hmm.
second advantage I had is because I was in consulting. Consulting is one of those services that the entire organization can buy. So I was working with different business groups, pharma, DIA. I was working with group strategy. We had a new group sustainability officer who wanted to do a consulting procurement project on acquiring sustainability services. So I started meeting with key people within the organization, and I started networking with them. That is what helped me land my next role, which I recently started, which is managing the entire commercial corporate services procurement delivery team. So I have a team of about 20 people located globally, from China to Costa Rica, and I'm managing now them within the whole commercial and corporate services domain. So I have marketing and sales, corporate services, and external workforce, which is consulting under my ambit. So
That
this is
is so
bit
good,
about me.
mashallah. Yeah. I'm at a loss of words over here. This is so good and so inspiring, mashallah say. I mean, just the fact that you were moving back and forth between Pakistan and Canada back when you were a kid, and then the fact that you mentioned that you used to wake up at 4 in the morning when people were, when somebody spoke to you about you were lucky when getting this role, and you actually told them that TK, luck is there, but then it's not just luck, it's about the hard work that you put in, it's all the story behind the main stage. Great. And mashallah, I'm gonna move on to the next
Mm,
question, which was about the challenges, but you have already talked about the challenges in your last answer. So we're now gonna move on to the second part of the questionnaire, which is about procurement and supply chain insights. Uh, Now, what key skills or strategies have helped you succeed in procurement at multinational companies? Because you have had the privilege to work with some really big names globally. So, what do you think were the key skills or strategies that helped you succeed?
If I have to go back to a few strategies, one thing because my I consider myself as a marketeer. I studied marketing. I had that exposure. I wanted to be a
Mm,
marketer before choosing this road. I worked in, I would call merchandising as sales, where I was, you were going out, you were meeting with people, you were meeting with store managers of Walmart, all of these big giants.
mm,
One of the strategies that worked for me was the outside in approach, and it still works for me today. What I mean by outside in approach is you go out, you meet with the store manager of Walmart. He tells you a bit about how Walmart works. Okay, so you get some insights from there. You see
mm,
how somebody else is working, you get those insights. Even today, in my current role, I think half of my time is SRM, supplier relationship management. I'm meeting with suppliers, I'm trying to understand their perspective on the market, their perspective on how things are going, their perspective on how they see certain things, certain challenges,
mm,
um, certain challenges, certain uh, what's happening in the market. So based on those, I think the outside in knowledge has helped me develop my one understanding and to my own knowledge base. When I'm talking internally to somebody, I can then count and bang on some of the things that I've learned from the market and I share those. And I think
mm,
a lot of people are not doing that. So when I sit with my stakeholder, when I talk with him or her, and when I share these facts that I've learned from my suppliers, I am able to make a much more lasting impression than somebody who just walks in blindly. So I think
mm,
that's a huge study that has worked for me in a global environment. Whereas your global peers, they also operate on a very different level because they also have that exposure. So to match that, you also need to go the extra mile. The
mm,
other thing which I've learned is that I think it's important for us to understand the cultural differences that people have. When you're working with people in Europe, it's a totally different ball game. Or when you're working with people in the US, it's totally different. You would never see a European leader say what's happening in the US. So there's a different perspective that's going around. So you need to understand that people operate differently. There are different challenges and there are different outcomes from for each of those people, and then you have to leverage that out to the best of your ability. I think
yeah.
these strategies have worked for me. Networking has been key. The highlight for me was that we have about 300, 400 odd people within our chapter, as we call it. And that we have about 117 people in Toronto within our company in procurement. The head of global procurement visited our office and she knew me by name and my face. That was a highlight for me. And that only happened because I was able to network. There were
Mm,
people who I've worked with go to her and say, there's this resource in Toronto. He's amazing because he's done this. And all of that happened because I network with people. I
yeah.
spend my time with people. And networking takes a lot of energy.
Mm,
You're going out of your comfort zone. You need to manage your day-to-day job, but then on top of that, you're doing the networking part. So it takes energy. But I think that has also helped me come to a point where I can actually leverage whatever I've learned and I can learn from people as I go along.
mm, perfect. You talk about networking. The thing about networking is, Arslan, that not a lot of people are comfortable with networking. People that I personally know as well, who tend to be introverts, they find it extremely hard to network. So, did networking just come to you naturally, or did you actually work on yourself with time?
It's a bit of both. Networking came to me naturally. So the idea of speaking to people came to me naturally, but formalizing it into a networking environment was something that I had to work on.
Mm-hmm.
I can easily talk to somebody, but for me to, have a very solid and a goal-oriented conversation is what I can talk to somebody for hours. But if I have to get something out of the conversation, I need to do my homework, plan out how I'm going to talk, what are some of the things I'm going to talk. And in the end, what I always do is I leave a very open-ended question with the person that allows me to continue or and reconnect with that person the next time. So, for example, I was
Mm,
networking with with one of the directors here, and I told them, what if I tell you that, or how would you feel if I would give 6 hours of my time to your team? How would that benefit you? You were almost at the closing time of the meeting. I told him, why don't I schedule something with you 3 months in the next quarter, and maybe we discuss and take this forward. So you leave a curiosity element. I always now leave a curiosity element at the end of the call, which enables me to have a follow-up call as per my own will rather than leaving it to the other person. And these are the things that you learn as you network with people. Some people take a lot of your energy while you're networking. You get a very similar response from the other person. So, sometimes the other response is very dull, whereas you have
mm,
to put in the effort. So every engagement is not the same. And then as you network, I have last year, 2024, I networked with about 36 people in the year. So that's almost, if it was one person a week, it would have been 52 people. So I was less than one person a week. So every 2 weeks, I was meeting a new person. So that's the
okay.
networking that I did outside my working day to day. So I met with 36, 37 new people outside my job or outside my day to day business as usual. So I was meeting at an average
Okay.
somebody every 1.5 week.
And when you network with people, so you have a figure, 36 people outside of your daily day-to-day tasks. When you network with new people, how does that help you, or what benefit do you actually take out from that?
So I think one thing which I take out of it, the entire thing is I learn from the other people's experience. I look at how or their industry experience, or if they have crossed, they have moved, they've traveled. That is one of the things that I pick. The other thing which I do with networking is that if I have to, for example, if I need to meet with, or if I aim to meet with the CEO for Roche Canada, I
Yeah.
would not just start networking with her. I would probably go look at her hierarchy. I would start meeting with somebody, build my relationship, then ask them, can you introduce me to your manager? I would network with them. Can you introduce me to your manager? Can you introduce me to your manager? And there comes to a point where the CEO, I'm meeting with CEO minus one, and then they would introduce me to her or him. So it's a stepwise
Uh-huh.
approach that I take. And what this does is that different people, in their different career paths, in their different journeys, they
Uh,
do share something what they have learned that helps me, pick out what they have learned. But the other thing is that things you get a lot of information. It's how you actually filter that information out. So I do try to, after every call, I have a 15-minute calendar block with me where as I just do a quick recap because you tend to forget as well. What are my key highlights from that call? So I then keep all of these things together in one place and I reflect upon it once a quarter, every year. At the end of the year, I always reflect upon, okay, who I spoke with, was it the right strategy, did I speak with? And then it happened sometimes. There was one year where, or the year before that, whereas most of the people I spoke with were within the procurement or supply chain domain. So last year, what I did was I started speaking people more in commercial, in finance, in HR. So I tried to have a blend and a mix of things. So you learn as you go along in your journey, and you do not get the same response every time. So, and then the other thing is the element of surprise also gets eliminated. So if you have a fear of meeting new people, by the time you're meeting your 15th or 20th new people, there's so much that you already know that you can make a conversation, you can create a conversation, you can lead the conversation. So that is how I tend to take out of my networking sessions.
wow. Honestly, I didn't know about all of this, and this is educational for me. Thank you so much. And I'm sure people who are looking at this and who are maybe new to networking, or maybe they do network, but they're trying to improve the networking skills, I think they can really take notes from this. Arslan, since this call is about to end, we're going to jump on to a new one. So I'm going to send you a new link. I'm going to pause here. Right. Okay, perfect. So, Arslan, thank you so much for sharing your insights on networking. We're going to move on to the second question of the procurement and supply chain insights part. Um, so, how does Roche approach procurement? How does Roche approach procurement differently compared to your past roles at Coca-Cola or FrieslandCampina?
I think one thing which Roche does differently is that because it's a huge organization, we
Mm,
have more than 100,000 people. So the approach sometimes becomes very fragmented as you're dealing with multiple places and uh, multiple places or multiple countries. And I think they're still very good at dealing with a lot of these things. They've made global teams that are sit regionally but operate globally. For example, my older team, the external workforce team, we were about 15 people in the team, and we were spread across locations, Costa Rica, Canada, Switzerland,
mm,
Poland. We had Spain, UK, Scotland. So these were seven locations where the 15 of us were actually spread out. So I think that is one of the things that they have mapped out, that they have global teams that are supporting contracts or they're supporting
okay.
the procurement work that has enabled them to tap into it differently. And the
Mm,
second thing which they're doing is that they have knowledge sharing across the board. So I, sitting in Canada, have worked on projects that are originated out of China. And I was
mm,
only able to do that because the organization allowed that knowledge sharing approach and equipped me with the right tools that enabled me to do projects out of my comfort zone or my location as well. The other two organizations I was part of was as they were still growing.
mm,
Coke was a very different ball game because their major focus area was high quality supply chain, as manufacturing was the peak of what they wanted to do. So for them,
mm,
the sourcing was mainly quality sourcing in terms of manufacturing. So we had to had local suppliers. We were only allowed, or we only were focusing on a supplier base that would enable our manufacturing sites. But with Roche, the idea is that you try out boutique suppliers, you try out people who are coming into the into the organization. Probably you find some expertise in that level. Sometimes you might not want to pay for the brand name, but you want to pay for the individual expertise that is there, so cater to that. Coke looked at it in the other way, where they wanted recognized companies to be able to support them because the risk for them in terms of the manufacturing was really high. The other
okay.
difference is that in a pharmaceutical company, and it was
Mm,
new for me as well, things are generally medium paced. Your clinical trials take longer. It can take 10 years for a medicine to develop different phases. So the general
mm,
approach within the pharmaceutical industry is medium paced. With Coke, it was highly fast paced because it's a seasonal business. You have a few summer months where they are peak season months, and then you need to
yeah.
make sure that you're working at 140%, 50% capacity. So I think
Mm,
that is the difference with Roche, is that it's a much more a medium pace. So you do get more time to plan, to upskill yourself, to learn, to do networking, to understand the
mm,
market lens, to do the outside in approach. Whereas at Coke, it was more of a straight A to B kind of a role. Similarly with Friesen Campina, they were a blend of both Coke and Roche, whereas
mm,
we did had some seasonality within the work, and then there the seasonality was different. Milk is something, or cheese is something that we use consume more in the winters, as
mm,
compared to in the summers. So for the reason is that the milking capacity of cows, it reduces in the winters. They produce less milk, so the reliance of the Pakistani market on open milk from the market decreases, and that is why they moved over to packaged milk. Whereas in the summers, the abundance is more on the production, so that is why people do not prefer packaged milk. So you have to deal with a different kind of seasonality. And this is the one
uh-huh.
this is the one business I'm in part of where seasonality doesn't have an impact. If you need a medicine, you would need it
Mm.
12 months across the board. You would not need more of it in the summers or less of it in the winters, provided the few medicines. But if you are on a long-term care, the seasonality doesn't have an impact. So you can plan out your things more evenly rather than a business that is highly impacted by seasonality.
Amazing. I mean, so Roche being a pharmaceutical company and Coca-Cola and FrieslandCampina, they are categorized under the FMCG. Obviously, FMCG companies have a higher turnover rate, and but I didn't know about the part where even the seasons have an impact on procurement. And I think for me, who is very new in the whole procurement industry, this is a very good learning point as well. Thank you so much for sharing that, Arslan. Uh,
Just
uh,
seasons, sorry to cut you off, but not just seasons, but events as well.
oh
Ramadan in
yes.
Pakistan, you consume more milk, you consume more cheese in these because you're making these dishes that you would generally not consume during the rest of the year. Or if certain festivals, you would. When I was in Alpers, we had a
Mm,
campaign always around 14th February where, as we were not selling chocolates, but what we as campaign started doing was we collaborated with the food channel on YouTube, Food Fusion, whereas we would start creating recipes using our products. So you do it's seasonally. It's not just a weather impact, but it's more.
uh,
It can have an impact in terms of your festivals, your religious festivals, your non-religious festivals, your uh, stuff like the Dairy Milk always has a campaign around Mother's Day or Father's Day, or they do festivals as well.
indeed,
So,
indeed,
and then
yes.
that is where, but it's all a back chain impact. So if sales wants to do a campaign today, they come to
Uh-huh.
procurement 6 months in prior. If there's a change in packaging, if there's a change in any of the things, or they're trying a new supplier, or they're trying a new mold, or they're trying something new, so the planning goes 6 8 months ahead of the actual due date.
Right. Perfect. Thank you, Aslan, for sharing those insights. We are now going to move towards the third part of the questionnaire, which is about the growth and career advice. Um, right. Arslan, what advice would you give to someone looking to transition from procurement in Pakistan to an international role?
So I think that's a question that I get asked a lot from a lot of people. And one advantage that procurement or supply chain in general has is that it is a transferable skill. Sales generally is not a transferable skill. If you are a champion of a certain market, it would be
Mm,
difficult for you, provided you go above a certain position where you're managing the strategy. But if you're actually in it as an
mm,
ASM or area sales manager, you are mainly based on the geography you are. Finance is also somewhat transferable, somewhat not. There are certain regional or local laws, things that you have to learn about. But supply chain generally is a very transferable skill. Procurement generally is a very transferable skill. Whatever I learned in procurement in my other organizations in Pakistan, I am now applying here at Roche. So one thing which I would admire, or which I would tell people to focus on, is learn the skills that will enable you to become a good supply chain or a procurement professional. Generally, people think how difficult procurement can be. You're just buying things, but there goes a whole lot of planning in everything that you do, from negotiations, from speaking with the supplier, from supplier relationship management, for internal customer relationship management. It all try to learn these skills because these are transferable skills and they would help you land a job at anywhere in the world. The second thing is try to learn systems. If you are part of an organization that has a system, most of the big organizations in Pakistan are using SAP now. Even if you have access to SAP, try to be curious about learning about modules that you probably do not use every day. What that does is, without spending a penny out of your pocket, you are learning things that otherwise you would have taken spent money on doing. So learn those skills that are given to you. The third thing I would say is that try to increase your knowledge base. Try to look at category specific, specific. insights and try to learn them. Also, because every category, so there within procurement, there are some categories that have that operate on a generalistic approach, but then categories do have certain insights that you want to learn as well. So, for example, the packaging material side, you are working on volumes, you take discounts on volumes, you need to know the volumes, how flexible are you in interchanging your volumes. But whereas if you're looking at agency size, volumes don't matter. It's the quality of production that you're doing, or what time are you actually going to have your commercial aired. That is where what makes an impact. So have category specific knowledge to help you. The other thing I would say, which is missing a lot in the people I speak to, and especially the Gen Zs, is that they only want to do the work that they are responsible for. They do not go the extra mile. And for some of them, the reason is okay that I am not being paid to do it. But then you have to have that approach. For me, money always was a byproduct. It's important, it's essential,
Mm.
but I would rank if I am okay with X amount of money, and the other organization is giving me X plus one, but the other organization is not giving me growth opportunities or learning opportunities, I would probably stick with the organization that is giving me X but has these other non tangible benefits as well. Try to go the extra mile, try to go out of your comfort zone. What this would actually do is it would enable you to learn without and it would enable you to learn things and would enable you to showcase those things as you progress in your career. If you look at my career, a lot that I learned was due to my curiosity of stepping out and talking, learning, doing this, doing that, and that has enabled me to gain that knowledge. Because in organizations, you generally would there are only a few individuals that have a whole career path that is given to them where they would go from A to B and learn. But majority
Mm.
of the times you need to learn as you go, and this is your chance to actually be curious and learn. So that is what I would say. If you have these basic fundamentals and your foundations are strong, procurement jobs across the globe become easier to get because you have a strong fundamental knowledge.
Perfect. In fact, I'm gonna add a question over here, which is not a part of the script though, but I'm gonna
Please
ask you
go ahead.
generally. Uh, Procurement, you said, is a transferable skill, and you can take this wherever you go. Uh, your procurement knowledge, because mashallah, so you have been to multiple industries within a global market. Were the skills you learned, were they taught in school, or were they taught as you went ahead with different industries?
The skills I learned were not taught in school. A lot of the skills I learned were from my first manager. He was so, but just stepping one step back. A lot of the people in procurement are accidentally in procurement. So procurement is not
Okay.
that rare where you actually. I think I would consider myself on the organization that I worked with. I've probably been one of those few individuals who chose procurement as a career. Others tend to fall back on it. So you see that there is a difference of that insight. Even though procurement is something that is taught mostly on the job. A lot of the skills I learned was from one of my oldest managers, Noman. He's now working in the Netherlands. He's managing the external manufacturing category for FrieslandCampina globally. And he was the head of procurement when I joined FrieslandCampina, and he got my interest developed in procurement. So
Right.
I learned the skills from him. There are things I learned in school, but I never thought I would apply them to the procurement landscape. For example, Porter's five forces. I think that was one thing, and your reaction was the same reaction that I had when he told me that. But let me explain to you. But what is Porter's five forces? Buyer power, supplier power, threat of new entrants, availability of substitutes, and there's one more. So when I'm negotiating with a supplier, I need to understand what the supplier power and what the buyer power has. If I'm
Mm.
Coca-Cola and I'm buying negotiating with a company called Bic which makes pencils, who has more power? Probably Coca-Cola has more power.
Yeah.
Then we also need to see what are we buying. My approach would change if I'm buying a pencil. Even if I don't get the deal, I'll probably walk out the door and I'll find 20 other suppliers that can give me a pencil. But if
Yes.
I'm negotiating with somebody who's giving me aluminum cans, and in Pakistan, there's only one company that provides local aluminum cans, which is PABC, Pakistan Aluminium Beverage Cans. My there the supplier has more power because of what they're constituting. So the approach is Porter's five forces. Then you see what you are, how important you are for the supplier. If I contribute to more than 25-30% of the supplier's revenue, he or she would treat me in a very different way. If I only contribute to 2% of the supplier's revenue, they would treat me very differently. So substitutes, how easy it is to substitute from one to another. So taking the example of this pencil,
Mm,
if one doesn't work, the second will work, second doesn't work, third will work, third doesn't work, fourth will work. But substitutes, if I have only one aluminum can company and
mm.
they are the ones who are approved, I cannot easily switch to another company. So whatever I have to make a deal, I need to make sure that the deal happens there and then and it is beneficial for the both of us. So I learned Porter's five forces in school, but I applied it in procurement when I went into it, and it was all because of that person who taught me about it.
Your manager, Noman.
Man, yes.
I need to connect with him now
So now I
because
will
he
definitely,
has inspired you to be someone who you are today.
he has.
And you were saying, sorry.
No, yeah, he has definitely inspired me to be. He's what has developed my love for procurement. I am here is partly because of how he has groomed me, how he has trained me, how he has enabled me to think outside the box, how he has enabled me to actually be curious, how he has enabled me to be consistent, how he has enabled me to, he's like, if you're doing something, agree with me today how you will do it. I leave that
Okay.
up to you. If you are going to do a project, agree with me how you will do it. What will be the first step, the second step, the third step, the fourth step. But the next 100 projects, you will follow this same discipline that is there. You will not break the discipline.
So
So
keep it
he taught
disciplined.
me how to be disciplined, how to be
Yeah.
consistent. All goes back to that one guy.
Wow. Wow, that is so cool. This actually, I was thinking about how teachers are the unsung heroes of the society, because because we are whatever we are today because of our teachers. Um, right, I'm going to move on to the second question of the growth and career advice part. So, Arslan, if you were starting your career today, what would you focus on to accelerate growth in supply chain and procurement?
If I was starting my career today, I would have Numan as my mentor from day one. Probably so I would pick and choose my mentor because I do feel like you said the teachers are the unsung heroes. That
Yeah.
mentor is an unsung hero in me. I would probably start doing a lot of the things that he taught me much before I started doing them, and that would have definitely enabled me to come to probably even accelerate my career. I still think that if I look at my career in terms of how the market is, I'm still very accelerated in terms of what I've achieved by the number of years I'm in. And I think all of this has been because I've learned these few skills of being consistent, being disciplined, and I would continue, and I would probably add all of these things much earlier in my life. So probably I would consider myself more disciplined in the start.
Right, right, perfect. Aslan, thank you so much for the answer. We are now moving towards the end of the interview, and now we're going to talk about the closing and networking part of this questionnaire. Arslan, are there any resources, certifications, or professional networks you would recommend for career growth in procurement?
Definitely are. Believe now certifications play a very vital role in giving you that that foot inside the door, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's basically how you then sell yourself. So if you're looking at overall procurement, there's a CIPM certified international procurement manager, there's a CIPM certification. There are just certain procurement certifications that you can do. Some people do go for the CSCP, which is an overall supply chain certification.
Mm-hmm.
So and for me, I personally feel any of these certifications are good certifications because what it tells the other person or your future hiring manager is that the person actually has an interest in the field and is willing or was willing to go the extra mile, even if you have
mm,
done the first phase or the second phase of it, which also shows a route that the person is flexible to learn. If he or she has done a certification, for example, if you have a background in engineering or if you have a background in marketing and then you do a certification in supply chain,
mm,
that showcases that you as a person have flexibility in changing and then doing what you are doing with that certification. So it actually helps you sell yourself in a very different way. So I
mm.
do feel that, and then for me, it's not one certification. I still have. I've started my CACP. I am currently preparing for it. I'll probably end of this year. I'm aiming to give my CACP certification as well. And I chose a general supply chain certification because my career has mostly been a procurement oriented career. Even if I don't aim to work in supply chain, but you never know how there's something that might interest me where I go directly into the supply chain, which is planning or supply planning or demand planning. That is why I'm choosing the CSCP, which is it because it will give me an overall
What's the full
image.
form of CACP?
It is supply a certified supply chain professional.
Okay,
And CSCM is certified supply chain manager. So these are certain, but CSCP holds more value globally.
okay, okay. Right. Because so you mentioned about CSCM. I personally know about CSCM because I think that was the one which was very common in Pakistan for those who were transitioning to supply chain.
Mm.
Uh, in the UK, CIPS is very common. SIPS.
Yes.
For example, my master's degree was affiliated with the SIPS body, and then after
Mm.
3 years of me working in procurement industry, I can apply for an MSIP, which is the member of
Yeah.
the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply Body.
Human supply chain.
Yeah, and every job that is being advertised over here that I come across on LinkedIn or any of the website, they do mention that, if you have a level 4 of CIPS degree or if you are an MSIPS, that's just, that's perfect. But I didn't know about the CSCP one, so I'm gonna have a look at this one as well. And then I'm also gonna put this on LinkedIn. Uh, but there's one more thing that I want to talk about, which is about data analysis and supply chain, because now we are kind of looking into how, uh, I mean, I mean, I moved to England 3 years ago, so I'm still very new to the whole global market. I graduated in 2020, so for me, for Pakistan in general, the transition to data analysis was very new. Uh, I mean, globally, data analysis was implemented a long, long time ago, but in Pakistan, it was still a new concept. So I'm still very much new to the whole Python and SQL and everything. But I do see nowadays that many of the supply chain professionals are kind of combining their supply chain knowledge
Yeah.
with data analysis. And I do see that there are jobs as well who actually give you a lot more money and are more in requirement if you know supply chain and data analysis. So if we talk about data analysis, what kind of softwares do you recommend for someone if somebody wants to combine combine data with supply chain?
Some people might disagree with me here, but I still think with all the AI and everything, having basic Excel skills for data crunching is still very important because we do get a lot of the data. And for somebody who does not want to invest in Python or SQM or all of these for
Mm,
him or her, the base or I would say not basic, but basic plus one or basic plus two Excel skills where they can, do all of the data crunching on Excel is very important.
mm,
I have learned Excel on the job, and I still feel that my peers who are in these for much longer times they excel at it, and it does do wonders for you. So even with all this AI, with AI, it is not the skill is not going to be eliminated, but it'll just be easier for you. But you
mm,
still need to understand what the tool does or what the capabilities of the tool. So I would definitely say having Excel knowledge and understanding is very important. And if there's an enthusiast who wants to learn Python, want to go to the Python level, Python
mm,
does also do a lot of wonders. And I've seen people uh, close their. If I spent 2 hours doing an analysis, somebody who knows Python will probably do it in 15 minutes. So if then
mm,
that happens, how much data are you working with? The amount of and the amount of data I work with in my job is easily managed through Excel. So depending on where you want to land a job in procurement, if you're doing demand planning for a company like Unilever, where you have X hundred brands and X hundred SKUs and X hundred brands, then Python would
Mm,
definitely help you in that aspect. So I think it's not a one window approach for all. It actually depends on what you want to do, where you are working, and what is the outcome of the job. I would probably not spend too much time learning Python because I aim to be in a job where data analysis is not my main job, but it's part of what I do. I would still focus
mm-hmm.
my time on supplier relationship management, negotiation, sourcing, category strategy, business continuity. But for somebody who's spending 80% of their job, 90% of job with numbers, for them, these skills are
Mm,
important. So my only take here is this: don't follow anything blindly,
mm,
because everybody is doing it. You should do it as well. The first, if we're talking about data analysis, the first thing you need to analyze yourself. Where do you fit in the whole picture? What does your job actually need this? Or are you
mm,
aiming for a job that is going to do this? A lot of the time I meet people, I come across people where they say that, we've done this way, but I don't use any of this in my job. So I'm like, why did you do it?
yeah,
Like, I had
yeah,
four friends, they were doing it. I thought I also do it and I spend this much amount of money, but I don't use it. So put your knowledge, put your brain to better use for things you'd actually use rather than just doing something for the sake of doing it.
yeah.
And for that, it's important that you analyze what is required for you and
Uh,
how will you benefit out of it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that answer, Aslan. Uh, Before we move on to the last question, there was one question that I wanted to personally fit into this, which is about purchasing, the Department of Purchasing and buying within supply chain. Um, w- how important do you think purchasing is for a particular company, and what career route do you think purchasing has within the procurement and supply chain domain? Is it even directly linked to it? Because I personally am in purchasing. I do purchasing
Okay.
for a private healthcare firm in the UK. I look after three hospitals in London. My purchasing budget is about £6 million in an overall £700 million framework. So when it comes to the numbers and everything, I can totally see that yes, purchasing and buying is an important part of an organization. But I really want to ask you, because you are based in Canada and you're working for a multinational company. What career line does purchasing have?
Okay, so one, some people use these terms interchangeably, purchasing and procurement. I still feel purchasing is a part of procurement. And that is
Okay.
how I have been taught, and that is how I see. So, purchasing actually means buying of goods and services.
Yeah.
That is very essential for organizations. Generally, a good organization would have about 40 to 45% of its purchasing or its of its procurement budget would be a draft as a result of its sales. So about 40% of their annual revenue would be their procurement budget. And those are budgets for buying of goods and services. Mainly raw materials are the biggest contributor there. So purchasing is definitely one part. So within, and how why I say it's part of procurement is that purchase, if I look at my procurement journey, if I look at how I do procurement, there are five buckets that I work in. Purchasing or sourcing is one of them. There is negotiations, and
Mm-hmm.
negotiations not only happen on price, there are many other things negotiations happen on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Payment terms, delivery terms, what are your Incoterms, what are your the quality. For example, if you're manufacturing a B grade, I want a B plus grade, would you be able to manufacture? Negotiation happen on a lot of those terms. So
Mm,
purchasing slash sourcing, negotiations, category strategy. You have a category, how do you develop a strategy for it? That is also very important. Then we have SRM. SRM is your supplier relationship management. How are you managing your supplier? And then we have contracting, which is the fifth piece.
mm,
So now a lot of procurement organizations have contracting within the procurement ambit, similar to our organization. So some people use purchase, whatever purchasing is now a part of, and it's the right part to be in. It's the same way you are applying to be a Formula One driver. You're like, I know everything about the car. I know to how to change tires. I know how to fuel it. I know how the engine works. I know how the seat works, but I don't know
Yeah,
how to drive it. Would
yeah,
you be
yeah.
a successful F1 driver?
Not really.
Similarly,
Yeah.
if you know the other four parts of procurement, but you don't know purchasing, you would be, it would not make any use. So purchasing is very essential part of procurement, but again, it's just one part. So you have a career within your entire purchasing, whereas you go as a buyer, a senior buyer, then you can be a category buyer. Some companies have ops buyers and strategic buyers. So strategic buyer look at the overall bigger picture. They buy high level, multi-category, multi-year goods, whereas ops buyers go, they buy business as usual goods and services. So that's
Yes,
one career
yes.
path.
Yeah.
The second one is that big organizations like ours, like I met with somebody who works for Walmart. They are part of the global negotiation team. So what that team does is that their job is just to do market analysis and do negotiations. They do not do any of these other parts of procurement. That is another career path. If you feel like you're good at negotiation and you just want
Mm,
to do negotiations, you can
mm,
choose a career that just fulfills on negotiations. Then within supplier
right.
relationship management, we as procurement professionals have our strategic suppliers or key suppliers who we do SRM with. But in our organization, we have those super big, for example, Tetra Pak would be that one company for milk pack or Nestle because they consume 80% of Tetra Pak products, whereas you would have a dedicated supplier relationship manager
Mm,
who would just manage on work on managing that supplier's relationship. They have a small invoice issue, they have any issues, they would look at the market trends, they would see how the suppliers perform, they would do quality analysis with the supplier. So even though you can go very deep in any of these ambits, or you can actually look at if you want to be more of a generalist and touch all of these. Similarly with contracting as well. And as you go across, I think for anybody in procurement or purchasing, it's ideal if you do a cross category exposure. You're doing purchasing for, let's say, one, you do start expanding it to something else. For us, I am doing commercial and corporate services. I'll probably do this for another 3 years, 4 years. I might step
mm,
into the world where I start looking at how clinical trials happen and I start working on procurement of clinical trials. Facilities and engineering is something as well in today's world. Digital and tech is also very important. So I would say that cross category exposure is very important. And for you or somebody to go to the next level, if you have the depth of exposure, it
mm,
becomes easier to do the lateral move. So you gain because if you because my end goal is or my aim is to be a head of procurement for a global organization. That is how I have set up myself in. The other goal I have is I wanted to be a senior manager by the age of 35, and my role now is a senior manager slash head of function role. My next role is I want to be a director by 40 and a senior director by 45, probably a VP by 50. That is how I've outlined my career. And every day that is what gets me out of bed. So setting up goals again goes to the career path. Setting up
mm.
goals also helps you achieve those. And my end goal is I want to lead a global, or I want to lead the procurement the department of a global organization at a global level. That is how I foresee myself in the future. So work towards what you want to achieve.
Inshallah, that's going to happen. And that is so inspiring, mashallah. And Um, I'm honestly, I'm overwhelmed by this call because this is education for me, and I'm sure people who are going to watch this is going to be a huge beneficial for them as well. With this, I'm going to move on to the last part. It's not really a question; it's just a small answer that I would require from you. Arslan, would you be open to staying in touch for future mentorship, not just with me, but also for any other Pakistani or international student who reaches out to you on LinkedIn?
1 million, like my little one says, 1 million, thousand billion percent. I am open to this because this is, like you said, this is a way for me to give back. I would love to share my experiences, and this can go, and the mentorship can. I'm definitely open to this to you, to everybody who would listen to this, who would watch it. I'm open to that mentorship piece. please feel free to connect with me, and I'm happy to share whatever I've learned, whatever help you need. And this can be extended to anything you want to understand a certain thing. You want to just speak your heart out about something. You want to understand something or talk about something. Feel free to use this channel, because I do understand that it definitely helps if you talk to somebody about a few things. And it definitely, like, I'm a firm believer of networking, and I believe and I say that I've reached here based on the networking that I've done. And if I then do
Mm.
not allow others to network with me, then I would not be preach what I believe in. So I am a believer of preach what you believe in. So I have networked, and I will give this opportunity to others to network with me as much as possible as well.
Sir, that is so kind of you. With this, we are going to end our interview. Arslan, thank you so much for taking out the time for this. Arslan Rawn, Head of Procurement Operations Delivery for Commercial Corporate Services at Roche Pharmaceutical. Arslan moved to Canada back in 2017 for his Masters of Science in Supply Chain Management and Logistics from the University of Windsor. Arslan, sir, thank you so much, and inshallah, we will stay in touch for sure. Thank you so
No,
much
then
once
thank you
again.
so much. Thanks a lot.
Have a good one. Take care, sir.
You too. Take care. Bye bye.
All right, bye.